Hi, it's Maya, and in this video I will be reviewing Sarah J Maas' newest adult fantasy novel, House of Earth and Blood. I finished the book a few days ago and I was so annoyed with the things that happened in the book and with the characters. I know a lot of people love this book. It has like 4.4 a rating on Goodreads. I was sure I was gonna at least like it. This did not happen. This book has 800 pages. When I finished it, I was annoyed times 3 because it's 3 times bigger than your normal usual book. I'll be talking about the things that I didn't like specifically, reading some of the quotes from the book. With this review, I'm not invalidating your own opinion, and we all have spaces to express those opinions. And for me, this video is my space where I want to express my own opinion. Okay, I will just tell you how I have split the review. First, I will just tell you a short summary of the book and general likes, dislikes, and then I will delve deeper into each subject. First, I will talk about writing style. Writing style I split into descriptions and stuff, and then into world building. And then I will be talking about the plot, which basically means plot holes, plot points that kind of ask me to suspend my disbelief beyond what I was ready to suspend. Third point will be strictly about the characterization and point of view characters and side characters. Before I start, I need to warn you that this video is definitely gonna be spoiler full. If you don't want to be spoiled for this book, just stop the video right now, because from this point onward we are going into the review, we are going into spoilers. House of Earth and Blood is a first installment in the series Crescent City. It is an adult fantasy, urban fantasy novel set on another planet that is like Earth. We are following Bryce Quinlan, half fae, half human, and Hunt Athalar, who is an enslaved rebel angel, as they are trying to solve a murder of Bryce's best friend Danica, who is a werewolf. The story starts when Danica is still alive, and we see her and the dynamic between Bryce and her. They're like best friends forever. And someone kills Danica and her pack of werewolves. And then they found the criminal, and the criminal is imprisoned. New murders start to appear, which are then connected to Danica's murders. Now we find out that actually the criminal that was imprisoned for her murder wasn't her murderer. Governor of the Crescent City kind of says to Bryce, hey, you're like a suspect in this case, and you're a civilian basically, but you will do this for me. I task you to solve murder of your best friend. This Hunt is an assassin, but he was tasked with protecting Bryce as she's like investigating. So they went on to investigate. These two characters are point of view character, and we have the third, which is Bryce's brother, Rune, and he was the best character. We'll talk about him later, but yeah, he's the one, he's like the side character who got his own point of views and the filler chapters. I will explain that later. First, let's just go into the writing style of the book. This is a adult fantasy. I kind of expected the writing style to be more complex and more adult. Why this book would be adult is because of the cursing and because of the sexual innuendos. There's literally no sex or very little towards the end. The adulthood of this novel, in my opinion, is definitely not seen in the writing style. So let me just first start with the cursing. Okay, I understand if people curse like in dialogues, but why would you have to curse in the descriptions? It seems distasteful to me. I don't want to be like on the high horse here. If it's used sparingly, it really leaves a bigger impact. This world basically has every like mythological creature you can imagine. The only thing it doesn't have are dragons. And I thought it was such a shame. I mean, out of all of the things that you could have left out, you leave out the dragons. Elements of the world building were very, very prevalent in the first 4 chapters or so. They were inserted inside the scene so randomly and untimely. And I made notes. I made so many notes. But guess what? The world building ultimately does not matter. You don't have to make notes. You don't have to remember the world, because the 800 pages that you would think would be for world building are kind of a romance and sexual tension / sexual innuendos. That's like what the book is, and the world building is done in the first 4 chapters. In the writing, I think one of the things that annoyed me was that everyone referred to anyone as male or female. I will just read to you the actual quote. The male's whimper was barely discernible, or the male's friends littered the living room floor, or the male's innards spilled onto the carpet with a wet slap. The half-fae female looked like hell, H-E-L. This is how it's spelled in this book. I understand that a doctor, if it's like a point of view of a doctor or a medic or something, they would refer to other people as male, female, and I think this would be a interesting characterization and kind of a quirk of this character. However, in this context, when everyone refers to everyone as male, female, it's just annoying and unnecessary. Okay, so this is a beautiful piece of writing. As Hunt was like going into the shower and submitted himself to its relentless burning. It's meant like he submitted himself to the shower water's relentless burning. I thought it was a fun description of him entering the shower. Next we have one description that is very nonsensical, and I love nonsensical descriptions that are hiding behind the mask of being lyrical or fake deep, when in reality they aren't. Let me just read it for you. The scent of her still lingered on the sidewalk, lilac and nutmeg, and something he couldn't quite place, like the gleam of the first stars at nightfall. What is the scent of the gleam of the first stars at nightfall? Like, what scent is that? Because I can't imagine it, and I'm pretty sure not even Sarah J Maas knows what this scent is. I don't think anyone does. Every character was sexualized, every character was described as the epitome of beauty. This woman was described as not a model and not an actress. The description goes on to describe her face, and it is a face of a model. Okay, listen. Then there was that. Her arresting face. Not the cultivated beauty of a movie star or a model, no. This was beauty in its rawest form. From her large brown eyes, to her full mouth, to her high cheekbones, all in a near perfect symmetry. So like, bear with me here. She says, it is not the cultivated beauty of a movie star or a model, and then she goes on to describe her high cheekbones, all in near perfect symmetry. I mean, I don't know about you, but to me this sounds like a model or a movie star. I mean, am I crazy here? This is literally what a movie star would look like. No one in this book has any flaws. I'm just saying, if characters had actual physical flaws, they would be so much more interesting. Sexualization of Bryce. The fact was that literally every character slut-shamed Bryce, and then we have the description sexualizing her, because every description had to remind us that Bryce had huge boobs, huge ass, wine red hair all the way to her ass, and that she always wore high heels and skin-tight clothes. We were reminded of this in every goddamn scene. It's like, yeah, okay, I know what she looks like already. So I think the descriptions of the space were really lacking, whereas the descriptions of the characters were very repetitive and overly sexualized and overly detailed. Ultimately, we would like know which nail polish Bryce wore. There's one description that I thought was chef's kiss. Like, honestly, this description was really good. Hell, his voice. Silk and steel and ancient stone. He could probably make someone come by merely whispering filthy things in their ear. And if you describe his voice like that he could like make someone come just by whispering filthy things in their ear, that's a good description, because now I'm imagining the voice that would do it for me, and I think every reader imagines like which voice would do it for them. And I want to contrast this description with the rest of the description. The rest of the descriptions were kind of describing the thing, while this description, because it didn't describe the voice, it just said how it would make you feel. It was like, it was so picturesque. Oh, okay, so we're back to male. This is from Rune's perspective. He's like the Fae, and his father is the Autumn King, and Bryce is his half-sister. His father's amber eyes blazed. There was more the male wasn't telling him. The male for your own father? Like, I can't even imagine, like, just thinking about my father or mother and being like, this female is hiding something from me. It's so unnatural, is all I'm saying. Sacrificing characterization for funny dialogue, punchlines. Would be in a serious scene, or a person would be described one way, like for example Hunt described as a monster and a killer, and then all of the dialogues that he would have with Bryce were ridiculous, cheesy. I don't even know how to explain. Okay, so one of the dialogues, real quick, I will read to you. I thought this was like a comedy, like you would find something like this in a comedy, and if this were a comedy, I wouldn't mind. You have my number now. Call if something goes wrong, or feels wrong, or if you need anything. Like a pizza. She clearly saw the middle finger Hunt lifted above his head. Shadow of death indeed. What I thought. Bryce purred. You could make a good delivery boy with those wings. So Hunt is like this monster psycho assassin who everyone fears, and no one fears him. She just said those things to him and he will do nothing to her. Hunt is such a pushover, and I'm just sorry that the book just didn't admit that. The first description was of him being all strong alpha hole, and I got a little doggy that yaps but doesn't bite. In this scene, I know that Sarah J Maas wants to establish Bryce as the fearless character. Unfortunately, what this scene in reality does is just dismisses all of the characterization that Hunt was described as, and kind of ultimately sacrifices and unwinds Hunt's authority that he was supposed to have but doesn't. And in this, the initial description of Hunt as monster is definitely disregarded. Henceforth, everything is just funny dialogues, punchlines, in the most untimely scenes. Like someone would die, there would be literal murder or attack on Bryce and Hunt, but the conversations would be like some kind of romantic slash trashy comedy. For example, Bryce saying, "Kindly fly the fuck off." I love this sentence. Kindly fly the fuck off. I will be saying this to people that I don't like. I know that Hunt has to do things that Bryce tells him because he's a literal slave and he was tasked with protecting Bryce. However, since he has this supposed authority over people, and since people are afraid of him and kind of accept his authority, there must be something that he does. Although he's a slave, there must be something with which he kind of gained this authority. But we never see this. When he constantly clenches his fists or furrows his brows or growls, and it's like, it's definitely, like I said before, like a small dog that yaps, 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 but never bites. Like, he doesn't do anything. I think the biggest minus, I would say, in the writing is Sarah J Maas's descriptions aren't picturesque. They aren't evocative. They're very telling. When I was reading the book, I really felt like I was watching television with no screen. Next in the describing and writing, we have the build-up of sexual tension. Amber eyes dancing with amusement as she winked at Hunt. His blood thrummed, his body tensing as surely as if she'd gripped his cock. What? This line, it does not agree with my palate. And of course, again, like, I'm not sorry if I sound like I'm on my high horse and looking down onto this book. I know a lot of people enjoyed it, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't enjoy it, and I wanted to enjoy it. I'm just saying, like, these things could be enjoyed by other people, but not by me. This line was just, I was done. By this point, I was done. Once again, just, if you've missed it, let me just read it. His blood thrummed, his body tensing as surely as if she'd gripped his cock. Okay, this is a sentence in the book, and I'm just gonna read it. How many males had run from this part of her, their alpha hole egos threatened by it? Bryce was like, I don't want to date no alpha hole. Hunt was literally an alpha hole, and he was like, I'm not an alpha hole, date me. The thing about Bryce and Hunt's relationship was that their relationship was kind of forbidden for no particular reason. Okay, so you noticed that they did not even touch upon the investigation, and this is because the investigation is literally this part of the whole. I didn't even get to it, and I will get to it, okay? I will get to the crime mystery part of it. So their relationship was kind of forbidden because the governor was like, oh, Hunt, you can't sleep with her. And that's it. And it's like, why? Okay, he's a slave, but if you knew this world, you would also question yourself, like, why is this such a huge deal? Forbidden romance is such a small scale that I was like emotionally dead. You gotta appreciate these types of descriptions. Let me just read to you. As he kept walking down the alley, the powerful muscles of his legs shifting. This is the walking. This is his muscles shifting. As I said, I think the descriptions of the places were so scarce that I had no image in my head of what I was reading, but there was always the image of big boobs of Bryce's and the shifting muscles of Hunt's. This was so repetitive, like, every setting of the scene would introduce the same things all over again. I think this book has 800 pages because of these unnecessary descriptions, but okay. They were painted ruby, and then we get Hunt's perspective of how he sexually imagines her toes, and it was really uncomfortable, and I will not read it. Pornographic daydreaming toe kink. Oh, okay, so we have another muscles rippling. Ethan stepped before another set of glass doors. He opened one, the muscles in his long arm rippling as he held it for them. The muscles are always rippling when it comes to males, but when it comes to females, their frames are always narrow and their faces are very symmetrical. So I wrote in this note like that the book is unnecessarily pornographic without the actual porn, and I think this is a perfect description of the book, because there's a lot of like build-up of things, like mentioning muscles that are rippling and toes in one's mouth, and there's barely any sex. But yeah, this book, as I said, is adult because of the cursing and kind of steam baiting, I want to call it. There's gonna be some steam, but there isn't. Okay, another thing in describing Bryce's turmoils. She keeps going over her emotions over and over again. I've been listening to this interview with Sarah J Maas, and she said like she kind of felt very anxious and had panic attacks and depression, and she kind of poured herself and her emotions into Bryce. I'm glad that this book managed to do this beautiful thing for someone. I was still very annoyed with how Bryce was written and how her grief for her best friend was portrayed, because to me it was all telling, no showing, and it was very repetitive, and it lasted and dragged on for so many pages and so many chapters, and it did not push the plot forward. And then we also had these obscure descriptions of how Bryce felt, so it was telling, but it was also telling in such a lyrical way, which is just nonsensical. Like, I didn't understand what these metaphors are, they were just like very weird. Okay, finally we are going on to the plot of the book, the actual investigation. Honestly, the investigation could have been done under 200 pages. The rest of the 600 pages are all filler chapters, unnecessary characters, half-baked side characters that I didn't care about, that constantly had conversations with Bryce. Things, repetitive things, and it always went on and on and on, cyclical repetition. Yeah, it definitely felt like a filler. It did not feel like I was waiting for something, like the book was leading to something and these filler chapters were only adding to the mystery and the suspense. For me, it just felt Sarah J Maas didn't know what to write about, and I have a lot of thoughts about the investigation. This novel, I can surely say that the crime was just very weak. Investigation was relying solely upon magics that we are not familiar with. So we have this huge info dump of the world at the beginning of the book, and then throughout investigation we have this repetitive cycle of a new murder, time passes with filler chapters and unnecessary details, and then they get to some kind of conclusion and a new clue that is based upon a new magic that we, the readers, didn't know even existed. How can you enjoy the mystery crime part of the book when you know that the new clues will be just pulled out of someone's ass? Clues were so far-fetched and were based solely upon the information that we did not have. And information was just like, the world was just added on something that was already crowded. As I said, this world had all kinds of mythological creatures, all sorts of, like, literally everything you can imagine from fantasy novels and books. Urban fantasy, so you also have technology, you have cell phones. If Sarah J Maas decided to kind of base her book on like 3 of those things, it would leave such a bigger impact, and the mystery would be better, because then we would be familiar with the rules of the magic system, the rules of the world, and we would be able to follow this mystery and kind of guess ourselves. However, with these clues that kind of appeared out of nowhere, were really far-fetched. I really felt disconnected with the whole crime thing, because I was just like, yeah, why should I even like invest myself when I know that the next clue will appear out of someone's ass? As I said, we have this Danika's murder, and then they catch the criminal, they put him to jail, and we are transported 2 years into the future, where we see Bryce. She's changed, she inherited even Danika's penthouse, so now she's kind of rich. She's working at this art gallery, has this boss whom she doesn't really like. This boss constantly threatens to turn her into an animal. Josiba, she was like the worst. Bryce was like searching constantly for new jobs and applied for new jobs because she hated her job. She literally inherited a penthouse. If she only sold this huge, in the middle of the city, great area penthouse, she would like get herself so much cash, she would be able to live off of it while she searches for a new job. So her being like stuck at this dead-end job and living in a penthouse, it doesn't go together, does it? There's a lot of plot holes, but I'll just cover the ones that were like the top of the list. Okay, so Bryce and Hunt are kind of investigating this murder, and they concluded that the demon who killed Danica and attacked Mika, the governor, so for summoning this demon, they needed, whoever did it, needed this black salt, which was very exclusive and hard to get and very expensive. Bryce and Hunt went to this meat market, which is basically the black market. Bryce wanted to buy this salt. Okay, so this is how the scene went. Bryce goes to this gold guy and she's like, sell me the black salt. And he's like, no, I won't. And she's like, I know you have it. Sell me, or I'll tell my boss that you won't sell me the salt. And he's like, oh, is Jasiba your boss? Oh, I'm scared. Okay, I will sell you 30,000 marks. Like, my first reaction was, why would he be scared of Jasiba? She has no authority over this guy. He's like, I will sell you for 30,000. And Bryce is like, 10,000. The gold guy is like, no way, like 30,000, it's expensive shit. And Bryce is like, okay, so in 6 minutes, my boss will call, and if I don't have the salt, you will be in big trouble. I just wanna now explain what happened here. We are at the black market. We are under someone else's domain. There's this Viper Queen that's really dangerous, and she like rules this black market. And Bryce literally goes to this guy who is under the Viper Queen and tells him that her boss will get mad if she doesn't buy this salt, and this is how she pressures him into selling her the salt at third the price. What authority does Bryce's boss Jasiba have over this gold guy? Like, what authority? So what if Bryce tells her boss that he doesn't want to sell the salt? Like, it's literally none of her business. And what bargaining chip does Bryce have to get the salt? I will tell my boss, so you have to sell me the salt. What? So what? Tell your boss. Like, if I was this gold guy, I would be like, who is this arrogant alpha hole coming into my joint, going after my salt? The plot hole is like, these people all have like super senses of smell, of hearing, because they're supernatural. Hunt is an angel, he can like smell everything. In every scene we are being reminded how beautifully nutmeg plus lilac Bryce smells. And in a lot of scenes when they go to the club, Bryce is drinking water. Hunt thinks she drinks vodka. She doesn't tell him that she stopped drinking, so he's like judgmental. And it wouldn't be such a big deal if A, he has super smell, so why couldn't he smell that she's actually drinking water and not vodka? And B, this was such a huge deal, like Bryce not telling him that she stopped drinking, and it was like supposed to show me how he's just judgmental of Bryce and Bryce doesn't deserve it. He could have smelled your drink and just solved this whole huge thing. So like, this scene is about Hunt going to this prophet, and this prophet is supposed to tell Hunt his future, and his future might be somehow connected to the investigation, blah blah blah. Hunt goes to this prophet and is like, everything I say here is confidential, right? And the prophet is like, right. And then 2 lines down, literally 2 lines down, the prophet is like, do you know what happened when Bryce was here? I will tell you. Do you want me to tell you? And it's like, you literally just said that everything that happens here is confidential, and you just wanna give up what Bryce has been through, like 2 lines down the road. And Hunt is not even questioning that. He's like, no, I don't want to know. Let's continue. Also, this whole scene is nonsensical and we are not finding out anything new. So this complexity of mystery crime is basically totally lost because of the new clues that appear out of nowhere, which I already mentioned. Why couldn't you like make some kind of clues along the way and then connect it all and make things interesting? And why? Oh my god, this horn, it's connected to the murders. After 2 years of not connecting the horn to the murders, now suddenly it's connected to the murder. This horn cannot be used because it's broken. And then someone suggests there's this new party drug, and this party drug makes your magic stronger. So this party drug is made out of synthetics, it's called synth, and if we use this party drug for the horn will work. Some random party drug, and they just concluded it would heal the horn, and they didn't even question their own theories. They were just like, Okay, this is my theory. This is the first theory I have. Let's just run with it. Another plot hole in the investigation is Bryce. She couldn't unlock Danika's phone. She couldn't like find important data on it. First of all, why wasn't this phone in the evidence? Second of all, why couldn't she just give this phone to the police so they could decode it? She was just guessing like the password for 2 years, and the most anticlimactic part is actual password. She had this leather jacket with these words, "Through love, everything is possible." It was like they're matching the two, and it took Bryce 2 years to guess the password to Danika's phone, which is, can you guess it? Through love, everything is possible. Another funny thing is files that Bryce had to get. Do you know how they were hidden in the cell phone? They weren't encrypted or anything like that. They were literally inside a folder, inside a folder, inside a folder, with different names, so it would confuse the person looking for the files. This is how I did things in middle school. These plot points really wanted me to accept the far-fetched explanations for things. First of those things, that with using this party drug, the salt for the demon somehow gets power and summons the demon. And this is why the murders were happening, because people who were using this drug were accidentally summoning the demon. With high doses of synth, which is this drug, the power of the salt gains control and can summon the crystallos, which is this demon, crystallos. It says like the power of the salt gains control and accidentally summons the demon. And then in the next sentence, they're just using drugs and somehow they're summoning the demon, whereas in the literal sentence before that, it says you have to have the salt because the power of salt is summoning the demon. And then it's like, yeah, normal people using drugs summoning demons. I will never accept this as a reasonable explanation for the investigation. I just can't. The peak of the book, the huge plot twist. Danika stole this horn and no one knew, and then Bryce found out. And then it turned out that Danika destroyed this horn in order to stop Mika, the governor, to use this horn with which you can like open the Hellgate and let out the demons. Danika wanted to stop the governor to do that, so she stole the horn. She did not destroy the horn. Actually, Danika stole the horn from the temple so the governor couldn't use it to open the gate, and instead of destroying the horn, she tattoos the horn onto her friend. She makes her friend be the target, and she gives the governor the perfect weapon with which he could open the gate. A good idea. I should just tattoo the horn onto my friend's back. Okay, now we're nearing the end, and the most ridiculous thing is this. Everything that they investigated at the end meant nothing, because the criminal, the governor, came by himself to the art gallery to visit Bryce and to tell her that he's the criminal and to use her, like the horn, to open the gate. So in the end, the investigation, everything Hunt and Bryce have been through meant nothing. And in the end, we have this beautiful TV show reality situation where every important person and every character that appeared in the book finds themselves at this dinner in this ballroom, and they're like discussing important things. And then Bryce is at her art gallery and this governor comes there. These people in the ballroom start to see the live feed of Bryce's camera from the gallery, and they start to see how this guy is admitting everything to Bryce, that his fault, he's the murderer, and now he will use Bryce to use her as a horn because Danika stole the horn, and everyone is like shocked in this ballroom. And for some reason they can't go out of the ballroom, for some reason they can't help Bryce. They just stay in this ballroom and they literally watch the live feed of Bryce having to battle this angel, and then this angel uses her to open the Hellgate, and then they keep watching the live feed of the city to follow Bryce as she's battling demons and trying to close the gate. And they're like commenting. It feels like this some kind of reality TV show, Big Brother stuff, where all the characters are commenting onto what Bryce is doing and how she's battling the evil. And how, of course, in the end, she realizes that she has power that is even bigger than her brothers and her father's, who is like the Autumn King. She gets trapped under some debris or something, and Hunt, once again, has to save her. Although she has this enormous, ginormous power, still, Hunt, as the male alpha hole, has to come and save her from this debris that fell onto her leg. In every scene it's like, yeah, she doesn't have to be saved, but she will be saved by Hunt. But she doesn't have to, like, it's not a requirement, she's a strong woman, but she will ultimately be saved by Hunt. The reason why I even finished this book was because I already gave it like 400 pages and I was like, well, 400 pages is basically one book, and now I have to review it, and I can't review it if I don't like finish it. Some of the other plot points are just like, we have this random gun mentioned in one scene, and later on the like bad guy is shot with this gun, and it's like, it's the classic story of Chekhov's gun. If you know writing advice, we all know if there's a gun in a scene, it should be used for something else, so we don't think about the gun. Because if you don't use it for something else, obviously this gun will appear to kill someone, and it won't be surprising. Danica had a sword, and it was like a huge deal of where the sword went missing when she was murdered, and it was like a huge deal for the investigation. Hunt was like, oh, this has to have something with the murders and stuff. And the best thing was that Bryce stole this sword, and she never told Hunt. She was always like pretending, yeah, this has to do something with the investigation, we should find the sword. And she had the sword, and she never told Hunt to kind of make it easier for them to proceed with the investigation. And at the end, it's like revealed that all along she had the sword, and with this sword, she kind of rips this governor apart. How it ended. So instead of this governor who died, his slave Isaiah from the beginning took his place. So that was really believable that a slave would become a governor of the Crescent City. I mean, that's what happened. And regarding the slavery of Hunt, there was this random demon who appeared like in 2 chapters. The demon was like a genie or something, because he was like, I will grant you one wish. And Bryce is like, make Hunt not be a slave. And he's like, okay. And now Hunt is not a slave, and this is how it ended. I just want to talk real quick about some of the characters and characterizations throughout the book. So we have 3 point of view characters. We have Bryce, Hunt, and Rune, who is the brother of Bryce's. Rune is like a side character. He gets his point of view chapters for some reason. I think the main reason is to establish him as a character and then use him as one of the main characters in the next books. And it's like so transparent. His chapters did not push the plot forward. And all of the chapters from Bryce and Hunt also did not push the plot forward in most cases, but they were still there. Hunt, his point of views were literally so pointless. Like, he would go somewhere and he would accomplish nothing, and it would have nothing to do with the mystery, with the crime, with anything. His chapters were so pointless. The worst thing was that Hunt was actually planning a new rebellion, and this was also a huge twist that he didn't tell Bryce and he didn't tell like the readers. I mean, we saw his life, we saw his point of view. Later it was like, yeah, all along I was planning this huge rebellion and like buying this new drug to help me gain my magic back and stuff, and it's like this intentional omission of his plan did not work for me at all. It really felt like it came out of nowhere. Yeah, also at the beginning, Hunt just kept thinking how he has to solve this case because the governor told him that he will forgive him for his rebellion. So his motivation for actually solving this crime was to gain freedom. And in the end, this was all thrown into the water because he was planning the rebellion, another rebellion all along. So why was he so invested in gaining his freedom by solving the murder? The revelations in the end clashed so badly with the beginning. Let's just talk about the characters for a little bit. I think the main thing that I noticed about the characters were the dialogues. The dialogues were really just punchlines. Dialogues were so different from what the characterizations of the characters was made out to be. If you took the dialogues without the descriptions, you would literally not be able to guess which character is which. They all speak the same, they all curse the same, they all have these stupid cheesy punchlines and jokes. No one has a unique voice. I felt no depth to the characters. I felt like they were all just chess pieces for Sarah J Maas to play with herself. I really felt like sometimes that if this book didn't have cursing and sex, it would be like middle grade. Obviously this is just my opinion. I'm not trying to like offend anyone. It's just like how I felt when I was reading this. So I just want to say the descriptions of the characters are just beautiful. And this is sarcasm. We have the first chapter, we have the first 2 pages, And this is how Bryce has been described: tucking a strand of her wine-red hair behind a pointed ear. And as if merely thinking about the level beneath Bryce's high heels had summoned her, a little voice from behind. Bryce's wrapped her hand around the front door's handle. The enchantments on it hummed against her palm, slithering like smoke over her freckled golden skin. Golden skin, I just pretended she was like Middle Eastern, but I don't know. And the last description: Bryce leaned against the lip of the desk and crossed her arms, fingers brushing against the stretchy black fabric of her skin-tight dress. But I only got more annoyed as time passed because I saw that literally every character was described the same. Every character was perfect, there were no flaws. Bryce is literally not the master of her fate. The fate is her master. If she only sat on her ass the whole book, ultimately the Mika, the governor who was the murderer, came to her art gallery, and he admitted what he did. Even if she just sat there and lived her life, everything would happen the same. Also, there was like some side character, her friend, who died. I didn't care. Okay, so I had a huge problem with how sexualized and slut-shamed Bryce was. Even Hunt, every character slut-shamed Bryce. And it's never addressed, it's never... In the end, Bryce changes from the party girl to the non-party girl, and even says that the party girl is the worst. I loved the fact that Bryce was portrayed as a party girl, as someone who likes to drink and do recreational, occasional drugs. And then in the end, everything just turns and she's like, I wanted to let people think the worst of me. And the worst being like that she's a party girl. Ultimate message was like, being a party girl is literally the worst. Deep in her soul, she isn't a party girl. She just let everyone believe it because she was, and now quote, not a party girl at all. Just content to let the world believe the worst of her. Here, it's literally said that she's not a party girl because she just let people believe she was, because being a party girl is the worst. There's nothing wrong with being a party girl. I don't get why the world thinks there is. I liked when she said that, but then considers his words. It's easier for me when people assume the worst about what I am. It lets me see who they really are. She says thinking the worst about her is thinking she's a party girl, which basically means that the worst thing you can be is, according to this passage in this particular book, the worst thing you can be is a party girl. Okay, so Hunt, how is he described? At the beginning, he's described as this monster whose voice makes people flinch, and then it's never delivered on this description. After the description of him being a monster, we have this first dialogue where we see how much of a pushover he is. Danica should have known better. Hunt asked, a shade more gently. Known about what? All of it, Sabine snapped, and again shook her head, clearing her grief away. Starting with that slut of a roommate. Slut-shaming, as I said? She whirled on Isaiah, the portrait of Rat. Tell me everything. Hunt said coolly. He doesn't have to tell you shit, Fender. As commander of the 33rd Imperial Legion, Isaiah held an equal rank to Sabine. They both sat on the same governing councils, both answered to males of power within their own ranks and their own houses. Okay, there's another thing. Whenever there's a female in power, there's a male that's above her in authority. Sabine's canine lengthened as she surveyed Hunt. Did I speak to you, Athalar? Athalar is Hunt's last name. He's just like clenches his teeth or furrows his brows and all of the other overused expressions. And throughout the book, whenever someone is rude to him, which basically everyone is, no one has respect for him, no one is fearing him, he is just clenching his fist, which is basically the direct opposite of how he was described to be. He's just suffering in silence. The description of Hunt was the literal opposite from what he was. Soon after we meet him, there's this huge info dump of his backstory and what he's been through and his ex-lover and the rebellion, and it's like, I just met him, I don't care about his backstory. Wouldn't it be better if his backstory was kind of sprinkled throughout the story, throughout the book, so it's more impactful? It's just everything is info dumped always about everything. It takes away from the reading experience. The Hunt-Bryce romance should have been enemies to lovers. Their friendship dynamics were pretty okay, but I never saw them as lovers. This like trope sure as hell is not enemies to lovers. To me, This is not it. I expect my favorite trope to be done in a very beautiful way that makes me feel things, and enemies to lovers is like my favorite thing ever, and I'm really I am holding this trope to the highest of standards. I went into this book expecting this trope, so yeah, this is why I'm so bitter about them. So as I already said, Hunt is definitely like this small dog that keeps barking and never bites. There's just another scene in which he's being challenged and he just like clenches his fist. Let me know if it gets you hot and bothered, Atalar. The Viper Queen took another hit of the cigarette. Her green eyes drifted towards his lap. I hear you're one hell of a ride if you pause the brooding long enough. Oh please. Hunt's teeth flashed as he bared them in silent snarl. I said he's like a dog yapping and never barking, and this is literally like description of him. Hunt's teeth flashed as he bared them in a silent snarl. This is like the epitome of what Hunt is like. Okay, now we have some side characters. They were over-described in their physical appearance, always like the perfect symmetry, blah blah blah. They did not have any characteristics, they were just bland and boring. So this guy literally appeared in the book twice, and this is how he was described. Idas's blonde hair fell to his shoulders in soft waves, loose yet well cut around his fine boned face, undoubtedly to show off the eyes like blue opals, framed by thick golden lashes. Those lashes bobbed once in a cursory blink. Then his full, sensuous mouth parted in a smile to reveal a row of 2 white teeth. Not 2 white teeth. There are 2 white. There are too much white. You can't even... It's written with a dash. 2-white. Because in this book, everyone is pretty. Not just pretty. In this book, everyone is a supermodel. Outlandish beauty. Impact of flaws on characters. It's just... You cannot surpass it with any of these perfectionist descriptions of characters. You cannot surpass how impactful the flaws are. This is the only thing that I liked in this book, so you have to like pay attention. Even as my stupid fucking title brought you further influence in the Empire and among your fellow kings, it still chafed, didn't it? That your son, not you, retrieved the Star Sword from the cave of princes in Avalon's dark heart. That your son, not you, stood among the long-dead starborn princes, asleep in their sarcophagi, and was deemed worthy to pull the sword from its sheath. How many times did you try to draw the sword when you were young? How much research did you do in this very study to find ways to wield it without being chosen? And this is basically the F you speak to his father, because Rune could like pull out the sword out of the sheath, which is kind of like Arthur legends, and his father couldn't, so Rune is like the chosen one and his father isn't, so he's like, you're just jealous. And yeah, I liked Rune because of it. His father was consistently throughout the story like this horrible human being, and then he makes this out of character visit to Bryce. Here we have this totally ununique spin. It wasn't built up to this point, it just happened out of nowhere. Her father, the Autumn King, denied her as a daughter. He didn't want to tell anyone she was his daughter. He doesn't have a relationship with her. His father is like the worst father ever. And then like suddenly he visits Bryce at the end of the book. I came here after all these years to tell you that you may be like your mother, but you are also more like me than you realize. His amber eyes, her own, flickered. And that is not a good thing. This guy wants his son to be like him. He wants his son. He puts so much pressure on Rune to be everything like himself and to be like the worthy son. And then suddenly he goes to Bryce and he says like, you're like me, but that's not a good thing. So out of character. Basically, I have one last sentence that kind of describes the whole book. Can a dead soul even serve as an anchor? Queen Hypaxia asked. No, Jesiba replied with all the finality of the Underking's emissary. No, it can't. This is basically the whole book. Can something be done? No, it can't. But still, it will be done. We are investigating a murder and random things will just be done to serve as a twist onto the mystery. Made no sense. So to conclude this review, everything that happened, in my opinion, could have been solved in 200 pages or lower. All of the 800 pages were not spent on world building, which they should, because this world has so many creatures and things going on. It's just too much. In my opinion, too much. This book should have been spent onto world building. It's an adult fantasy. It is the same genre as Game of Thrones, for example. And like, take the world building in Game of Thrones. How rich is that world comparing to this one? As I said, there were info dumps in the beginning, in the first 4 chapters, and then we have just this back and forth between Bryce and Hunt and Rune sometimes, and these meaningless conversations between people that I don't care about, some like side characters that were all pretty but had no personality. A Court of Thorns and Roses I read a few months back, and I also didn't like it. I didn't like the romance, and I thought the plot was shallow, but I will say that her writing was okay, and somehow in this book her writing just goes downhill. It's just my impression. There were some random inserts of Jesiba's life and Rune's life, which it seems to me that the two of them will be like the main characters in the next books. They serve no purpose other than be introduced. So finally we have reached the end of this rant review. I need someone to not love this book. Please tell me if you didn't love it. Thank you so much, and I will see you in another video, and have a nice day or night. It's so late now, and I can't wait to go to sleep.